Hi, I'm Bob Gimlin, and you're seeing home video from 1997, taken in low-light conditions. The footage is from the Catskill Mountains in upstate New York. This is the original version, as it was collected by the Internet Archives in 2007, but it was filmed in 1997, which means this footage is almost certainly older than some of you, and the audio, was never given to the archive. And this video clip captured something truly remarkable, and it's a magnificent example of capturing much from little. It's so blurry and unclear that it's easy to say, well, it could be anything, except it can't be. It really can't be. There are only so many explanations for what you're about to see, so let's take a look. The very first thing to note is that something walks by in the background, silhouetted against the sky. Did you see it? Right here, and I will scrub it a little bit. You're going to want to look at this stump or whatever it is, but that's not it. It walks toward that, or up to that. It's this little helmet-looking thing right here. Now I'll scrub it back and forth. And trust me, if this was the meat of the clip, I would not be talking about it. There's more to it. So I'll brighten it a bit, add some contrast, and blow it up. Okay, it's nondescript, but it's safe to say that something is in fact moving in the background. And it seems to be large and upright, so that's a good start. It really is a good start relative to other alleged Bigfoot footages out there. It moves. See that? Moving right to left. And here's how Animal Planet zoomed in and messed with the settings. Okay, something walks by. Terrific. And to be clear, the man who shot this footage, Doug, didn't see anything at the time when he was filming. None of the camera's intended subjects noticed anything that day, which is obvious, or else they'd probably tried to film it, or film it more clearly. It wasn't until some time later that he noticed the anomaly in the background, and curiously, this isn't it. This figure going right to left. This is not the noteworthy event of this clip. See, it's been said that something jumps off the larger subject, and then promptly begins to swing around in the trees. And this is the part they're talking about, where they say something comes off of this figure and goes into the trees. Now, just by virtue of making this video, I've watched this clip 1,000 more times than it merits, and I can't make out a little figure separating from the large figure. I just see lurching. Finding Bigfoot claims to point it out, but it cuts off without explanation, so that's not too helpful. But the subject in the tree is quite clear, and this is what the videographer initially noticed in the film. You can pretty clearly make it out in the original footage, even without any enhancements. And though I can't attest to seeing one creature separating from the other, I do in fact believe that the thing walking, or the thing on the ground, seems larger than the thing in the tree. The ground object is just too big to be the tree object, and I could ramble on and on about it, but I'm convinced that whatever is on the ground is not the same thing that is in the tree. Honestly, it's pretty hard to argue with that. Something is definitely moving around in the trees, and it sure seems like something brought it there. So you see the thing on the ground at the 4-second mark of the video, then the camera goes down for 9 seconds, but as soon as the camera comes back up, you see it, right there. That's a lot of distance to cover in 9 seconds, for a human at least. Right off the bat, this is obviously a non-human primate. I don't think anyone would debate that. Be it a gibbon or a lemur or spider monkey. And it appears on and off for the entire 90-second clip. It seems long-limbed, agile, and adept, like it's done this before. It's built to do whatever it's doing. Obviously, it's grainy as all heck, but I mean, look at the people, or person, right in front of the camera. This hasn't been censored or edited. That's just how blurry it appears in the low light. But fortunately, there are a few shots where we get the figure in the background pretty clearly. Relatively clearly, I should say, due to the skies lighting from behind. The audio was removed from this clip simply because the uploader didn't want to share his and his friends' drunken banter, which I certainly understand. Some skeptics have said that cutting the audio is suspicious, but I wholeheartedly disagree. So there are really only 3 options that I can think of to explain this clip. The first option is that it's a prank or hoax perpetrated by the videographer, and that's unlikely to me, extremely unlikely. In fact, I think it's the least likely of the theories I'm presenting here. It's unlikely because, how? They got their friend to deposit their pet gibbon or lemur or spider monkey into a tree for the sake of a Bigfoot video, and not notice the only part of the video that's actually Bigfoot-esque in the classical sense. Plus, the footage is just too bad to be a hoax, in my opinion. If this was intentional, they would be closer to it. I'm just certain of that. From the viewfinder of a camera from the 90s, this would be even less visible than it is to us here. The difference, of course, is that we have the advantage of being able to pause and reverse and scrub and play back and zoom and adjust. Bigfoot or not, I'm more confident than usual that this isn't a hoax. The only thing that would suggest a hoax is that he noticed it at all. Because it's such a minute detail, but it caught his eye, and I can understand that. Option number 2 is that an unrelated party, so a person unrelated to the videographer, actually abandoned his pet gibbon or lemur or spider monkey, and by total happenstance, these people caught it on camera and noticed it later. And, I mean, we know it happens. People do, in fact, abandon their exotic pets, which they had no business having in the first place. And I'm saying abandoned as opposed to letting it roam around, because I've worked with primates enough to suspect that releasing a captive gibbon or lemur into a tree means you're never seeing him again. They don't bond with their captors the way many seem to think they would. Maybe it was on a leash or harness or something, but that's a great way to have a brachiator hang itself. But I'm just going to go with abandoning. And to be clear, the abandoning pet hypothesis may be exactly what we're seeing, and it's nothing anomalous at all. And if that were the case, then the truly strange part is that it happened to be caught on camera, and then noticed 10 years after the fact. And the third option, of course, is that perhaps an individual of the species commonly referred to as Sasquatch or Bigfoot deposited its offspring into a tree. And that's what we're seeing here. Now, I'm first to admit, number 2 actually seems more likely, quite frankly, and there are a few reasons for that. If Sasquatch are as human-like, as is so frequently and eloquently proposed by their advocates, then I doubt that their infants or adolescents would be like this simian, or this monkey-like. Here's some footage of young gorillas hanging in trees. And surely gorillas are literally orders of magnitude less human-like than alleged Sasquatch-like creatures, and they just can't brachiate like we see in this video. Not even close. So if the infant of a known, large-bodied, terrestrial primate can't brachiate, then it seems unlikely that the infant of an unknown, large-bodied, terrestrial primate could brachiate. Gorillas are primarily terrestrial, like us, and their infants are next to useless, like ours. And both of those things, terrestrial and useless, are quite unlike whatever we're seeing in this clip. And this is totally neither here nor there, but one would imagine that a gorilla would be far more monkey-like than the alleged North American cryptid. Because make no mistake, if Sasquatch is indeed a flesh and blood animal, then it's dynamic. Its lifestyle simply can't be one of sitting around eating leaves all day. But is it possible that a Sasquatch-like creature's young, the infants of the species, are differently abled in youth than in adulthood, as in, built more like a gibbon when young, and then grow into the more robust form as they age? Yes, it's possible. Perhaps trees are used as a nursery, where it's perceived safer. There are some factors that could support this theory, and some that would detract from it, and I'll start with the problem. First and foremost, the smarter something is, the more useless it is as a baby. That seems to be how it works with mammals. A baby deer can sprint within hours or even minutes of being born, while it takes well over a year for a human baby to learn how to run, and it takes almost a decade for a human baby to learn how to run with any efficacy. Whales and dolphins are another example. They're next to useless when they're born. In fact, they would drown without being guided to the surface to breathe for the first few days, or at least the first few hours in some cases. So just by the laws of repeating patterns, I don't see Sasquatch, or at least infant Sasquatch, as being particularly competent at anything for the first few years, which is certainly when they would be this size. Finding Bigfoot actually did a size comparison here. They got exactly where the cameraman stood, and they filmed the location, and the figure is significantly smaller than Cliff here, and yet slightly too large to be a gibbon or a lemur or something, which is kind of interesting. And they didn't even go there in the show. In Finding Bigfoot, they didn't go there, but I don't know why, because, Renee, the skeptic, even said it looked more like a third his size. That's a huge gibbon. A gibbon shouldn't weigh more than 20 pounds. Cliff obviously weighs more than 60 pounds. I'm surprised they didn't explore that more. Anyway, because intelligent mammals tend to be strictly dependent on their parents for quite some time, I'm inclined to believe that a youth of this size, which would be a very young Sasquatch, would not be left to its own devices in a tree, and would not be this physically competent. We could be seeing a unique adaptation here, A unique adaptation that might be unique to North America. Anywhere else in the world, a 10 to 15 pound primate in a tree is called a lunch, and that's due to snakes and birds. But curiously, North America really doesn't have any of those. Well, obviously we have snakes and birds. I just meant none that would really specialize in taking out something like this. We don't have boas or pythons. The closest analog snake to those that's native would be the rat snake. They do hunt in trees, and they average 6 feet and have been documented growing up to 8 feet. But they have never been known to make prey of anything larger than a squirrel. And I was curious, so I looked it up, and they aren't even known to attack chickens. So unlike Asia and South America and Africa, we just don't have any snakes that would pose a threat to something like this. And as for raptors, predatory birds, that is, there is no raptor in North America that has a staple food source even close to that size. The overwhelming majority of birds of prey couldn't handle a cat, let alone a gibbon. Really, the only contenders would be the eagles, and that's the bald eagle and the golden eagle. But there seems to be a law of the land that they can't really carry anything much greater than 1/4 of their weight. And a big bald eagle is 15 pounds, with the world record being 18 pounds, and the creature we're seeing here is likely heavier than that, much less 1/4 that weight. I was actually kind of surprised by this, but the most a bald eagle can carry is about 4 pounds. Though of course they have been known to swim back to shore with fish they can't carry. We have owls too, of course, but they're just way too small. To put that in perspective, the largest species of owl in North America by far is the snowy owl, of which Hedwig here was an adult. They max out at about 6 pounds. Great horned owls max out at about 4 pounds. So North America simply doesn't have, say, South America's harpy eagle, which specializes in tree stuff, monkeys, sloths, and parrots. And the harpy eagle is nearly 1/3 larger than bald eagles. Also, say, the Eurasian eagle owl, which is over twice the size of a great horned owl. Now, don't get me wrong, being a 20-pound meat sock would be no fun in North America, but you'd be considerably safer in a North American tree than you would be in a tree in Asia or Africa. This is a total stretch in every sense of the word, but this little case study is a good representation of what I've long considered to be the most likely origin of the Sasquatch, a North American ape, unique to Asian and African apes, because its environment is unique, and that uniquity has an awful lot to do with proximity to the equator. You know, they all live in rainforests, but ours up here are temperate. Anyway, because of the lack of specialized snake or raptors, perhaps North America's trees were considered quite safe for very cute baby Bigfoots. I've heard at least one report of such a thing. However, in the not-too-distant past, teratorns, which were 1/3 larger than condors, hunted the skies. So they were significantly bigger than any predatory bird alive today, and they lived until a mere 10,000 years ago or so. And for ages we thought they were like vultures, but fairly recently we learned that that's not true and that they're like storks. They didn't have strong jaws like vultures or condors, so they weren't picking apart carcasses. It means they were swallowing things whole, which means they were hunting things smaller than themselves, slightly smaller at least, because birds are crazy in that regard, with their greedy gullets. But one would guess that infant Bigfoots would not be a common enough thing for any predator to acclimate to. All said and done, one factor remains that I believe discounts the tree nursery hypothesis. Why would any doting parent deposit their offspring in the one place they can't get to? Because whatever we're seeing here is not like a baby bear. A baby bear is going to come down sooner or later, one way or another. But this could be gone lickety-split, which is not what you want for your adolescent. So because of that, and because of the aforementioned reasoning on how useless infants from intelligent species tend to be, I remain dubious of the tree nursery hypothesis. This video is the only indication of it, and falls far short of anything conclusive. Plus, why would a species dedicate so much mental mana to a trait that will serve little to no utility as an adult? Even the only truly arboreal great ape, the orangutan, doesn't have this frenetic energy behind it. Doesn't move like this. They are truly arboreal, which Sasquatch are not. It really does remind me of a gibbon, which are the smallest of the apes, an offshoot of the great apes, which is a possibility for what Bigfoot is, but not a theory I support. I think Sasquatch is entirely separate from the great apes, but convergently adapted from a North American simian of some sort. That's what I think. All of that to say, it seems unlikely that a creature described as Bigfoot would have offspring so specialized in brachiating, though I concede it is possible, and perhaps more likely in, say, upstate New York, compared to other wild places on Earth. Though of atrocious quality, This footage is actually better than most for one reason. This creature is brachiating. It's undeniable. Anyone who has seen monkeys or apes knows this. And anyone who is even remotely versed in North America's wildlife knows that this ain't it. That we know of, at least. It's no possum, it's no raccoon, it's no baby bear or porcupine. There was quite literally an unidentified primate filmed in upstate New York in 1997. It's undeniable. I guess the question really comes down to, which do you think is more likely? Did someone release their pet gibbon, and it happened to be caught on camera? Because again, if it is a pet gibbon, it's being abandoned. You can't put a rope around something like this and expect it to survive. And unleashed, you're never seeing it again. So did someone abandon their pet gibbon? Or was something else captured here? I don't know. But I do know that this isn't the first instance of a large, unidentified monkey accompanying a smaller unidentified monkey that I've covered on the channel. To me, the question isn't so much what's in the tree. The bigger question is, what put it there? Anyway, make sure to like the video, subscribe for more content, and as always, thanks an awful lot for listening.